The galaxy had always underestimated humanity, dismissing Earth as a backwater planet of fragile beings incapable of coordinating beyond their own petty disputes, a notion so widespread that the most powerful interstellar councils barely acknowledged our presence, assuming that diplomacy and subtle containment would be enough to prevent humans from ever becoming a threat. Yet, beneath the surface of our seemingly ordinary civilization, a patience cultivated over millennia had taken root, shaping generations who mastered adaptability, strategic thinking, and technological ingenuity in ways the galaxy could scarcely comprehend. And when the first warnings came, thinly veiled threats from the Veylian Concord over minor border skirmishes in the Outer Arm, humans responded with measured calm, sending delegations that spoke with courtesy, respect, and the kind of subtle firmness that only those who had survived countless crises on a crowded, resource-strapped planet could muster. Oh, while quietly preparing defenses and contingencies that even the most meticulous alien strategists failed to anticipate, from decentralized communication networks immune to interception, to stealth fleets hidden within asteroid fields, to bioadaptive armor that could withstand weapons considered catastrophic by conventional galactic standards, the aliens, confident in their understanding of human psychology, dismissed these measures as overcautious and redundant, believing that treaties, threats, and the promise of mutual gain would restrain us, never imagining that humans had long since perfected the art of waiting for the precise moment to act, a moment that required both timing and patience on a scale the Veylians could not fathom. And when the moment finally arrived, it began with a seemingly minor incident, a failed attempt to seize a human research outpost in the Epsilon sector, an operation that the Veylian High Command expected would provoke only mild resistance, perhaps a few skirmishes that could be resolved diplomatically. Instead, they found themselves facing a coordinated counterstrike that exploited every flaw in their strategy, hitting supply lines, communication hubs, and command vessels with precision that could only come from meticulous planning informed by an intimate understanding of both human ingenuity and alien arrogance, revealing weapons that had been hidden under decades of treaties, technologies that mimic natural phenomena, fleets that appeared out of nowhere to overwhelm and isolate key targets, and cyber warfare that penetrated systems the Veylians believed were unhackable, forcing the alien commanders to watch in disbelief as humans maneuvered through the chaos with an almost preternatural composure, anticipating reactions, setting traps, and simultaneously protecting civilian colonies that were considered expendable by the aggressors, a level of strategic foresight that left the Veylian intelligence analysts scrambling to reconcile their decades of underestimation with the terrifying reality that humans were not only capable of surviving the galaxy's harshest conflicts, but of turning them into opportunities for absolute control. Diplomatic envoys sent in haste to halt the escalation were met not with panicked negotiation, but with calculated counteroffers that reinforced human advantage, offering terms that seemed conciliatory while positioning human forces to strike decisively at weak points in Veylian infrastructure, revealing a level of cunning and patience the aliens had never attributed to a species they assumed would break under pressure. And as the first wave of coordinated assaults crippled several key systems, the realization dawned across the Veylian ranks that diplomacy alone would never contain humanity, that every act of appeasement had been met with meticulous preparation, that the very patience humans displayed was not weakness but the calm before an unstoppable storm. And as news spread through the galaxy, other empires began to understand the cost of misjudging the Earth, witnessing in real time how a species dismissed as primitive, peaceful, and predictable had transformed every insult, every slight, every ignored warning into a masterful demonstration of power, resilience, and intellect, forcing the entire Galactic Council to reconsider their assumptions, confront the limits of their arrogance, and brace for a new era where humanity would no longer negotiate, no longer be dismissed, but command respect through undeniable action. And in the quiet of their command centers, the human leaders observed the chaos with steady eyes, knowing that what had begun as a minor provocation would end with a lesson the galaxy would never forget, that diplomacy had been tested and failed, and humanity had proven that patience, preparation, and unity were forces far stronger than any alien fleet or council decree. As the shockwaves of humanity's initial counterstrike rippled through the Veylian territories, the aliens struggled to comprehend the scale and coordination of the response, their advanced fleets crippled not by brute force but by strategy that exploited every blind spot in their decades of assumed superiority. And while the Veylian High Command convened in panic, humans were already leveraging the chaos to secure vital systems, establish communication links with allied species who had long suffered under Veylian oppression, and fortified positions that will become unassailable before the invaders could even regroup, showing a mastery of logistics and foresight that left alien tacticians scrambling to recalibrate, unaware that humanity's ingenuity was not limited to military might but extended into diplomacy, science, and cultural influence. As human negotiators reached out to neighboring star systems with offers of protection and alliances, turning former vassals of the Veylians into eager supporters, and every step the humans took further undermined the alien perception of control, creating fractures in their alliances, spreading doubt, and forcing entire fleets to divert resources to defend planets that they had assumed would fall easily, while humanity's technological edge, long underestimated due to its secretive and decentralized development, revealed weapons and systems that defied conventional understanding, including propulsion mechanisms that allowed near instantaneous redeployment across sectors, defensive shields that rendered conventional bombardments ineffective, and adaptive drones capable of learning and countering enemy tactics in real time, all orchestrated by human commanders whose patience and composure never faltered even as the Veylians attempted desperate countermeasures. And as the human forces tightened their grip, they demonstrated an unexpected ethical restraint, evacuating civilians, protecting neutral territories, and disabling rather than annihilating critical infrastructure where possible, showing the galaxy that strength need not be ruthless to be absolute, and that humans possess not only the power to dominate but the wisdom to wield it with precision, strategy, and foresight, which in turn forced a cultural reckoning among alien populations who had long equated power with violence. And as news of humanity's victories and protection of oppressed species spread, confidence in the Veylian Concord eroded, insubordination grew among their ranks, and whispers of surrender and negotiation emerged. Yet the humans, guided by leaders who understood that mercy and patience were as lethal as weapons, continued to press the advantage, carefully selecting targets to maximize impact without unnecessary destruction, demonstrating a clarity of purpose and moral calculation that even their enemies could not ignore. And with each passing day, the Veylians and their allies realized that they had misjudged humanity entirely, mistaking caution for weakness, diplomacy for submission, and that the very traits they had mocked, the unity, patience, and resilience of humans, were the engines driving a force that could not be contained, a lesson the galaxy would remember forever as humans continued a methodical, unstoppable campaign, revealing not only the depth of their preparation and ingenuity, but the extent to which the entire interstellar order had relied on assumptions that no longer applied, leaving every empire and council member scrambling to adapt to a new reality in which humanity dictated the terms, the strategy, and the pace, and where every miscalculation by the old powers was met not with chaos but with precise, overwhelming consequences designed to ensure that no species would underestimate humans again. As human forces expanded their influence across contested sectors, the Veylian Concord found themselves grappling with a reality they had never anticipated. Humans did not merely fight to repel aggression. They redefined the battlefield itself, reshaping every engagement with ingenuity, adaptability, and foresight that no alien strategist could match. And while the Veylians relied on overwhelming numbers and advanced technology, humans turned unpredictability into a weapon, using decoys, simulated retreats, and environmental manipulation to lure the enemy into traps that neutralize their technological advantages, striking with surgical precision while simultaneously reinforcing defensive positions that made counterattacks costly and futile. And as each encounter unfolded, stories of human valor, strategic brilliance, and relentless resolve spread not just through allied species, but even within the ranks of their enemies, forcing officers and commanders to confront a staggering truth. Humanity's strength was not just in weapons or ships, but in coordination, ingenuity, and an unwavering capacity to anticipate consequences, traits honed over centuries of surviving crises that had tested every aspect of human society, from resource scarcity to internal conflicts, giving them an edge in planning, logistics, and psychological warfare that the Veylians could not comprehend. And while humans demonstrated overwhelming military acumen, they also leveraged intelligence and diplomacy in ways that reshaped interstellar alliances, offering aid and protection to species long oppressed or ignored by galactic powers, thereby eroding the authority and credibility of the Concord, turning potential neutral systems into strategic allies whose loyalty was earned through respect rather than fear. And as the galaxy watched, the Veylians' arrogance became their undoing, as each miscalculation was exploited, every overextension punished, and every underestimate of human capability met with a precise, devastating response, from infiltrating command networks to neutralizing advanced weapons platforms, to orchestrating multi-system campaigns that showcase a coordination rivaling the oldest empires. And in the midst of these operations, human leaders balanced ruthlessness with restraint, never allowing victories to devolve into unnecessary slaughter, evacuating civilians and preserving ecosystems while still dismantling the Veylian capacity to wage war, demonstrating a moral clarity that left even the most hardened adversaries in awe. And as the cumulative effects of human action spread across the galaxy, entire political structures began to crumble, empires that had long assumed dominance questioned their assumptions, and the Veylians themselves faced dissent, mutiny, and despair within their ranks, as reports of human strategy, ingenuity, and ethical dominance circulated, revealing that what had once been dismissed as simple, unruly planet-bound species possessed not only the capability to survive interstellar conflict, but to decisively alter the balance of power across the galaxy, turning every failed assumption into a stepping stone for greater human advantage. And by the time the Veylian command realized the magnitude of their miscalculation, it was too late. Humans had already seized strategic points, rallied allies, and demonstrated the full scope of their patience, preparation, and indomitable will, proving unequivocally that diplomacy alone could not stop them, and that the era of underestimating humanity had ended forever, leaving the galaxy to confront a singular, unavoidable truth. Humans were not merely participants in interstellar politics. They were the force that would set the terms, reshape the order, and dictate the consequences of every decision henceforth, a revelation that sent shockwave through every council chamber, command deck, and neutral system as the full extent of Earth's patience and preparation was revealed in one unbroken, unstoppable campaign. As humanity's influence and control extended deeper into previously contested space, the Veylian Concord began to experience the full psychological weight of their misjudgment, the initial shock of tactical losses evolving into a pervasive sense of dread as human strategies continued to unfold with ruthless efficiency and precision, and yet with a discipline that few could comprehend. Because unlike the Veylians, humans combined foresight, adaptability, and ethical calculation in a way that transformed every engagement into a lesson in patience and mastery, striking where the enemy least expected, fortify where the enemy assumed strength, and exploiting weaknesses hidden beneath layers of arrogance and overconfidence. And as human fleets executed simultaneous operations across multiple star systems, coordinating attacks, evacuations, and defenses with new perfect synchronization, the aliens struggled to maintain cohesion, their chains of command fractured as subordinate. Officers questioned orders that now seemed foolish in hindsight, and through it all, humanity did not act recklessly but methodically, using each skirmish, each victory, to reinforce alliances with neutral systems, provide aid to oppressed species, and consolidate power without unnecessary destruction, a strategy that confounded the Veylians and their allies, who were accustomed to domination through fear and brute force. And as the campaign progressed, the human leaders demonstrated an almost preternatural understanding of both psychology and logistics, predicting alien movements, preempting ambushes, and countering sabotage efforts before they could take root, while at the same time maintaining morale, cohesion, and ethical integrity among their own people, a balance that seemed impossible yet was executed with clinical precision, and as word of humanity's decisive victories, strategic brilliance, and unwavering resolve spread across the galaxy, it became apparent to every observer that a paradigm shift was underway. The assumptions upon which interstellar politics had been built for centuries were obsolete, for humans had revealed that diplomacy, patience, preparation, and the willingness to act decisively when provoked were not only compatible but mutually reinforcing, creating a force capable of reshaping alliances, toppling empires, and dictating terms to even the most powerful adversaries. And while the Veylian command scrambled to respond, deploying reserves, rerouting fleets, and issuing desperate ultimatums, humans remained several steps ahead, turning the aliens' own strategies against them, neutralizing their technological advantages through adaptive countermeasures, exploiting overconfidence in both tactical and strategic planning, and simultaneously demonstrating mercy to civilians and allies, showing that strength and restraint could coexist, and that every decision the Veylians had made in dismissing humanity had been not only a tactical error but a moral one. For the humans' calculated response revealed not only superior intellect and planning, but a vision of interstellar order rooted in justice, protection, and enduring influence, leaving the Concord to watch helplessly as entire systems shifted allegiance, critical infrastructure fell under human control, and former enemies were forced into submission, while humans, guided by leaders who understood the balance of patience and power, continued to orchestrate their campaign with precision, never rushing, never overextending, yet always striking with unstoppable impact, until it became undeniable that the galaxy itself was witnessing the emergence of a new dominant force, one whose strength was measured not in arrogance or brutality, but in preparation, strategy, moral clarity, and the inexorable capacity to act when the time was right. And as the Veylian leadership realized the full scale of their mistake, panic and despair set in, leaving them powerless to reverse. A course of events that had been centuries in preparation, a lesson in patience, strategy, and underestimated potential that would echo across every council chamber, command deck, and planetary system for generations. And that lesson was clear. Humans could not be contained, dismissed, or restrained by diplomacy alone. For when provoked, their response would be absolute, unrelenting, and transformational, reshaping the galaxy and the very rules of engagement for every civilization that had once assumed they understood humanity. With the Veylian Concord reeling and their fleets in disarray, humanity shifted from reactive defense to proactive strategy, orchestrating a series of multi-system operations that combined military precision, intelligence mastery, and diplomatic influence in ways the galaxy had never witnessed before. And while alien commanders scrambled to anticipate human movements, they were constantly outmaneuvered, as humans leveraged both technology and ingenuity to create layers of unpredictability that neutralized superior numbers, enhanced weaponry, and centuries of assumed tactical wisdom, all while maintaining tight coordination across vast distances using encrypted communication networks, adaptive propulsion systems, and decentralized command structures that allowed for instantaneous decision-making without bottlenecking. And as each engagement unfolded, humans demonstrated a remarkable capacity to protect allies and civilians simultaneously, providing evacuation corridors, shielding habitats with advanced energy barriers, and using countermeasures that rendered enemy attacks not only ineffective but often counterproductive, turning attempted strikes into liabilities for the aggressors. And beyond the battlefield, humanity's leaders skillfully engaged in a campaign of psychological and political influence, offering support and protection to oppressed species, neutral systems, and even alien factions dissatisfied with the Veylian rule, thereby fracturing the Concords' authority from within and creating a network of loyalty and cooperation that amplified human power exponentially. And as the Veylian intelligence apparatus attempted to recover, they were confronted by the staggering breadth of human preparation, contingency plans for every conceivable scenario, redundant supply chains that made attrition irrelevant, autonomous fleets capable of independent action, yet perfectly aligned with overarching strategy, and a moral code that guided decision-making, ensuring humans could strike decisively without undermining long-term objectives. And as these campaigns continued, the ripple effect across the galaxy became impossible to ignore. With star systems once considered secure falling under human influence, Veylian allies defecting in the face of demonstrated human superiority, and public perception across countless species shifting to acknowledge the overwhelming competence, resilience, and ethical clarity of humanity. And even as some factions attempted desperate counterattacks, humans anticipated and countered each move, using knowledge of alien psychology, culture, and decision-making patterns to predict reactions and set traps that left the aggressors increasingly desperate, disorganized, and vulnerable. And at the same time, humans did not act impulsively. Each operation, each strike, each diplomatic engagement was part of a larger, meticulously planned strategy designed to achieve maximum effect while minimizing unnecessary destruction. And as the Veylian Concord watched their empire unravel, the realization settled in. They had grossly underestimated a species they assumed could be contained through diplomacy, treaties, and intimidation. Yet that species had demonstrated not only the capability to survive but to dominate, to reshape interstellar politics, and to enforce consequences with an unprecedented combination of patience, intelligence, and restraint. And as humans continued to advance, the galaxy began to understand that they were witnessing more than a war, They were witnessing the emergence of a civilization that refused to be constrained by assumptions, whose response to provocation was measured, unstoppable, and transformative, and whose leaders had proven that patience, strategy, and moral discipline could be just as decisive as firepower, leaving the Veylians and their allies to grapple with a new reality in which humanity dictated the terms, set the pace, and redefined what it meant to wield power across the stars, a revelation that would forever alter the balance of influence, respect, and fear among every civilization that had once dismissed Earth as insignificant. As human forces pressed their advantage, the Veylian Concord faced an unraveling of control that transcended simple military defeat, for humanity had demonstrated a level of strategic foresight, adaptability, and ethical precision that left the aliens incapable of mounting any effective counteroffensive, and while fleets once considered unstoppable were dismantled with surgical efficiency. Humans simultaneously extended aid and protection to countless species previously subjugated, establishing secure zones, humanitarian corridors, and technological support networks that both strengthened alliances and undermined Veylian influence, and every victory, every calculated maneuver, was executed with an understanding of long-term consequences, ensuring that human dominance was sustainable, precise, and morally anchored, as leaders coordinated planetary defense grids, adaptive weapon systems, and fleet logistics in ways that exploited the Veylians' overconfidence, turning each anticipated response into a tactical disadvantage for the enemy. And while some alien commanders attempted desperate gambits, human intelligence, predictive modeling, and decentralized decision-making neutralized every move before it could gain traction, leaving the Concord scrambling to react, improvising where preparation was futile, and realizing that the very patience humans had shown was not passive restraint but the foundation of a relentless, calculated campaign that would not end until the balance of power across the galaxy had shifted irreversibly, and as the psychological impact of these campaigns spread through the Veylian ranks, fear, doubt, and dissent became as deadly as any weapon, eroding morale and cohesion even as humans continued to strike with precision, reinforcing strategic positions, and consolidating control over contested sectors. And beyond military success, humanity's leaders wove a complex network of alliances with other galactic powers, leveraging shared interests, mutual protection agreements, and the promise of stability to draw support away from the Veylians, ensuring that their enemies were isolated both politically and militarily, and as humans revealed technologies previously hidden from the galaxy, including adaptive energy shields, near-instantaneous communication arrays, and fleet coordination systems capable of autonomous real-time decision-making. The Veylians were forced to confront a reality they had long dismissed. Diplomacy and intimidation could not restrain humans, whose patience, ingenuity, and moral clarity had been cultivated to perfection over centuries of survival and innovation, and as humans executed the final phases of their coordinated campaign, striking decisive blows to critical command centers, securing planetary systems, and protecting allies, the galaxy began to witness a transformation in interstellar order, where humans were no longer underestimated, no longer ignored, and no longer bound by the assumptions that had once restrained them, and in the holes of Veylian power, despair gave way to reluctant respect as the aliens finally understood that humanity's restraint had always been deliberate, that every act of patience and diplomacy had been preparation for a moment in which the full force of human capability could be revealed without hesitation, and when that moment arrived, it reshaped the galaxy entirely, leaving the Veylians to accept that they had misjudged Earth at their own peril, that humanity's true strength lay in their ability to balance foresight, strategy, ethical action, and decisive power, and that any species foolish enough to provoke or underestimate them would face consequences as inevitable as they were absolute, a realization that cemented humanity's position not merely as survivors but as dominant architect of interstellar reality. With the Veylian Concord broken, their fleet scattered, and their political alliances in shambles, humanity moved from decisive victories to consolidating a new interstellar order, demonstrating not only that they could respond to threats with overwhelming force, but that it could also govern, protect, and inspire confidence across entire star systems, and as humans, establish secure trade routes, protective fleets, and technological exchanges. Formerly neutral oppressed species began to rally willingly, drawn to a civilization whose patience, foresight, and moral clarity had proven far superior to the old powers of the galaxy. And while the aliens attempted desperate appeals and negotiation, They were met not with fear or surrender, but with calm authority, humans dictating terms with precision and restraint, enforcing consequences while offering pathways to coexistence under conditions that ensure stability and security. And in this unfolding order, humanity revealed an unprecedented combination of power and wisdom advanced. Great coordination that could respond instantly across light years, adaptive defense systems that rendered traditional weapons ineffective, predictive intelligence that anticipated threats before they materialized, and a governing ethic that balanced might with protection, restraint with decisiveness, and victory with the preservation of life. And as the galaxy came to witness the full scale of human capability, species that had once dismissed Earth as insignificant now recognized a force that redefined expectations of survival, strategy, and ethical governance. And while some alien factions remain hostile, fearful, the majority aligned with humans not out of compulsion, but because they understood that this was a civilization that could be trusted to wield its unmatched power responsibly, and that restraint and patience will not weakness, but the greatest weapons of all. And as humans established communication networks, shared technological advancements, and integrated formerly contested systems into a cooperative, secure, and thriving interstellar community, the valiant leaders faced the undeniable truth that diplomacy failed to contain a species with preparation and patience had been deliberately measured against the galaxy's arrogance, and that every insult, every slight, every attempt at underestimation had been transformed into a strategic advantage that reshaped the balance of power forever. And as humans stood as both protectors and enforcers across the stars, the final lesson became clear to every observer. The era of underestimating humanity was over. Diplomacy alone could never stop them, and patience, foresight, moral clarity, and relentless capability combined to create a civilization that would define the future of the galaxy, a force that would ensure that respect for Earth and its people was absolute, permanent, and unquestioned, leaving the Veylians and all other powers with no alternative, but to accept humanity not as a species we controlled or dismissed, but as the architect of a new interstellar order whose legacy will be measured in strategic brilliance, ethical strength, and the undeniable truth that when provoked, humanity's response would always be decisive, unstoppable, and transformative, echoing across the galaxy for generations to come, ensuring that never again would any civilization make the fatal mistake of assuming diplomacy could contain the full scope of human power.